Hello everyone, today we start talking a little bit about PlayFab, which is some off topic in this YouTube channel because normally we develop our MMORPG, but one of my subscribers asked for some features for a simple backend that she needed. Since he or she wasn't well aware of developing backend services, I thought maybe leverage a full featured service which makes you do the things that you want to do maybe and use Azure PlayFab. The thing is, I never used Azure PlayFab before, but I tried it out and found some good and some bad things about it. Let me introduce what PlayFab is real short. PlayFab is a framework or platform that gives you analytics for your games and also has implemented several features which sometimes are really hard to implement yourself. For example, voice chat over for your game and things like that are already implemented in PlayFab, which is great if you want to leverage those. But on the other side, with like every other platform that is out there, if you want something different than the platform provides, it's often harder to work around the platform than just leveraging it. So it really depends if the platform has the features that you need or if you have to work around the platform. But for PlayFab you are very flexible, and let's take a look at it. PlayFab, first of all, when you register an account at PlayFab, which is for free, and you get a lot of free CPUs, units and everything, so you can definitely as a developer try it out for free without having to pay anything at all. There are two ways to log into PlayFab. One is via a Microsoft account and one is via providing email address and password. I first of all made a rookie mistake to sign up with a Microsoft account. The problem with that is that the Microsoft account itself is not supported in the Unity SDK. So when you want to have an easy setup in the Unity SDK, I recommend logging in normally. Sorry when I make some gestures of pain, because yesterday with sports exercise I made a small mistake with bad posture and basically destroyed something in my bag. Hopefully it will be fine soon. But back to topic. I suggest you log in with email address. If you already have signed in with a Microsoft account, you can create another account with email address and password and just give it access rights to your game. And then that's what I basically did. That's why this account has two games. One is the game of its own account, which I didn't do anything, and one I gave him access to my game from my Microsoft account. You can do that under user and roles, and there you can see the same email address because one is the Microsoft account and the other one is the account we just set up. Another great thing about PlayFab, what you get is you get this whole analytics stuff for free. So when you use PlayFab, you will see how many players are active and everything like that. You can ban players, everything that you need from a operational side of operating your game backend is there for you to use, which is very powerful and usually quite a lot of work to do on your own. So you get that for free, which is really awesome in my opinion. So let's talk about the things that we implement or that I have implemented with PlayFab. First of all, let me disclaimer it. It is sample code that I created. So the software architecture and everything behind this is very horrible. The reason for that, or why didn't I change that, is a complex software architecture behind a sample makes the sample ridiculously complicated, and I want the sample to be as easy and understandable as possible. The features that my subscriber wanted, he or she wanted to be able to trade player items, to chat with players, which I didn't implement because it's a feature by PlayFab where you need to provide a credit card. It is for free if you use it. Let's check it out. It's called PlayFab Party. So, and if you want to leverage PlayFab Party, you have to provide a credit card. You get a lot of free minutes, so you can try it out every month pretty much for free, but I was too lazy to do that. And if you have understand how to leverage PlayFab, then you will be able to set up PlayFab Party yourself, which is great. It enables your players to chat with each other and even has voice chatting and lobby features. But we focus on how to leverage PlayFab, how to maybe have some server code that runs with your PlayFab so that we can do some authority stuff. And we do player trading. And for player trading, I introduced two items, which is item 1 and item 2. And the thing is, we will develop an authority server, which whenever the player plays the game, he gets one of both. He gets one item 1, and he gets one item 2. Let's check that out real fast, how this works. So I leveraged Azure function, and that's one of the things I would suggest. So you go to your Azure portal and you press create resource and do you can just do function. If you write it correctly, it should work. Then you get a function app. The great thing, and why I suggest indie developers to use the function app, is that like PlayFab, you get a lot of stuff for free. So when you create a function app, which I wouldn't do, which I don't do now because I already created one, but I show you what my configuration was. So I did .NET 6. You can do a 3.1. It's fine. You can do containers or code. I just did code. Why not? You give it a name, and then one important thing you can do is consumption serverless. The reason why we do consumption serverless, you could pick the other ones when you want to have production environment, but for a dev environment, the reason why we want to be consumption plan is that you get a lot of stuff for free. So when we check out the consumption plan, let me find that. It's in the Azure pricing page. Oh, it's in German. Let me switch that real fast. Then you have in the consumption plan 1 million requests or 400,000 gigabyte seconds, which is memory and CPU in one metric. So you have round about 1 million requests to your Azure function for free every month. And for a developer, that's quite a lot. So you just would press create now, and then you would have an Azure function app like that. Here under configuration, you can configure variables for your Azure function to use or to read. And it's a good practice to have things like the developer secret and your PlayFab title ID as a configuration here. So you could have a test environment and a staging, and they would have different configuration, and you can configure them in your PlayFab, in your Azure function itself. So the title ID is 9EB99. I don't show the developer key, even though I will disable the revoke the key anyway. And this is the title ID. You can see it here in the URL, for example. And you can also see on the title settings, I guess the developer key, here are the secret keys. But I don't want to expose mine. So these environment variables are readable by the Azure function. So first thing we do is we create a new Azure function, which is really easy. You create a new project and you pick Azure functions, and you just go next, and you will have something like that. but obviously with other code than mine. So the next thing we did, I gave my function a function name, PlayFab demo, and Azure Functions work like this. You have some triggers which triggers the function. There could be a lot of those. There could be a Cosmos DB trigger. When something in Cosmos DB happens, your Azure function get triggered and stuff like that exists. But the thing that we need is an HTTP trigger, which is basically like a REST call to our Azure function. So in our one, we could rename that to something different, but I kept it like it was. And we have an HTTP trigger, which is authorization level function. I will talk about that real fast. And then we want a get or post request, and we don't need any routing. And this is our request, and we get some logger, which we can leverage to log things to the user interface from Azure. So let's talk about the authorization level. They are different. With authorization level function, what we force the application or the caller of this function to do is provide the function key within the call. Without the function key, the function will reject the HTTP trigger. For example, if we make this anonymous, then everyone could call this function, which is not what we want, because we don't want anybody who knows the URL, which will be hidden because we will just leverage PlayFab, and PlayFab will call this Azure function. But still, we will make this secure as possible. Who knows who got leaked to the function. And with the authorization level function, the call to the function needs a secret. And the secret is in your Azure functions under app keys. And there you see the default or master secret. And this is part of the URL when you want to call the function. You don't need to know how that needs to be done, because the Azure portal knows how to do that. And when you get the URL of your function, get your function URL. I have deployed the function already. That's why PlayFab demo is here. And then we have get function URL. And then you see my function secret is already part of the URL. That wouldn't be the case if you make it anonymous. Then everyone could call your function like that and it will execute it. And now they need to know this code, and which normally outsiders doesn't know. Obviously, I exposed it now in the video, but obviously normally only your team or only the person who set this up knows that. So, and what does our function do? It reads the secret and the title ID from PlayFab, and it level sets it on the static settings, which is not great, because one friend of mine was complaining about me leveraging the static settings, because when something bad happens with the PlayFab client and the static client, for example, has an exception, the whole system would be down. And if you have your own instance of the PlayFab, then it would be better to it would be more resistant to failure. But since this is a sample, it's way easier. And if you don't do something bad, then you should be fine with using the static. So we set the developer secret and the title ID. This basically makes our function calls that we do at the bottom here administrator of the system. So we can give the player items. If you don't have the developer secret, then you can't do that. And we read the context. We don't do too much with it, but we read the context out of our request that we get, and the function execution context looks something like that. You can copy that over. I copied it from a sample too. And we read the context out of it, and what we get is basically the master player account ID, which called us. So our client calls PlayFab. He wants to play a game, and our PlayFab calls our function app, and our game is just giving the player some items. So it's really, really simple. And we built a request. A PlayFab always works like that. You build a request and then you can execute the request. So we built the request to grant items to user. And then we just use the PlayFab API, grant item access to user. We await because this is obviously async. And then we return the result, which isn't too much. And so when a new player logs in and he presses the play button, then he will get these 2 items. Let's test it out. Let's create a new player. Let's abcd@abcd.com and we register him, hopefully. Register successful, then we log in. We will look at the client, and then when I press fight for items, we will call PlayFab. PlayFab will call our Azure function, which will log into PlayFab as administrator and give us item 1 and 2. So this is all great and working. Let's check out how to set up Azure function to know. Let's show how you set up PlayFab to know your Azure function. What you can do under automation cloud script functions, you can register a Azure function. We have an HTTP function. You can give it a name and a URL. The URL needs to be with the function key, so that this function also logs in, calls the Azure function, right? So let me check if I can show that. So here it's like function get URL with the secret key, so that this is safe. No one outside knows the key and can call it, and only here. You could also use a queue. It depends what you want to do. That would go too deep, I guess. So, and you give it a name, and that's the name that you will use in the client to call this. Let's check that out. So on client side, I have an item, a trait just for UI purposes. They just do UI stuff, and I have this PlayFab manager, which is software architecture wise very horrible because he does everything. But this is every PlayFab calls I do in one spot, so it's quite easy to understand as a sample. So, and we have here we have login, register, open trade, call function app. So call function app does a PlayFab Cloud Script API, there's a profiles API, and there are some APIs. And honestly, one of the worst things about PlayFab, in my opinion, is that the documentation isn't really good. But I heard Microsoft is working on that, so it's getting better and better. And so the Cloud Script API, what you can do is when you know the API, you can go to definition, and then you can see what this class is capable of. And we can execute a function, which is exactly what we want to do. So we do Cloud Script API execute a function, and then like everything in PlayFab, you create a request. We can get this out. And let's call that func request. Put it like that. Then we create the request, which has an entity key and an entity type, which is basically our player itself. And then we have the function name. So we are calling as ourselves with the function name PlayFab demo, and we give some function parameters which we don't use on the function side, but if your function has parameters, you can give them like that. And in your Azure function, you have in this dynamic the function argument, which is what we just sent in. It doesn't need to be dynamic. You could do this type safe, and I suggest you do that, but I was lazy. And then we want to generate a play stream event. When you generate a play stream event, there is analytics in PlayFab where you can see the play streams that the player has executed. Let's check that out real fast. So we have our new player, which I recently created. And then he has a play stream. And now when we watch him and he's doing that again, getting items. He fights again, he should get 2 more items. Then this should show in his play stream events. That's how you can debug what's happening. And if you put that to false, it doesn't show in this UI in PlayFab. So we see he did a client focus change, he executed the function, player inventory items added, and then he's back to normal and he logged in and everything. That's some things. If you want to build those things yourself, it's a lot of work, and you get those things for free. The player has an inventory with our 4 items in it and everything, and you can even revoke those items or grant items, so you have all this administrator and support stuff that you might need for your game for free. This is a great thing when you want to leverage PlayFab. So, but the other thing my subscriber wanted to do is to trade items. And trading items in Azure PlayFab is not what I expected it to be honest. I think the trading API needs a lot of work. But let me show you what I mean. So we can open a trade now. Let's say we open an item 2. My trading system works like that. If you trade item 2, then the other player has to provide item 1. So we can open the trade. And you need to input a player email address. Opening a trade in PlayFab is more like an auction house. So let's check the API real fast. Let's go through this whole class. So we also have register and login. There are multiple registers. Sorry for jumping around. There are multiple register functions. For example, I have used email and password. In PlayFab samples, you see that they log in with a custom ID that they generate and everything, but that's obviously hard to do in production environment because no one knows the ID. When the player gets a new computer, the new computer might have a new ID, but he wants to play on his old account. I think email and password is the most easiest thing you can do. Also with email and password, they force you to have a username. I was lazy. I just put the part from before the add and put that at username. Maybe you want to provide that by the player, which makes more sense. And then you again created the request and you call the PlayFab API to do stuff. And PlayFab API always has 2 callbacks. One is success and one is error. On error, always in my case, logs it basically to the console and logs it through the UI, but that's just for the login screen. So when I try to register again an account that already exists, then we get an error, and this is shown here, email address not available. This is this code of line, and this code of line also puts it as an error in the console. So on error, I always point to this function here. So, and for the success ones, PlayFab has different types. They are actually type safe, which totally makes sense. So on register gets basically a register PlayFab user result. And since this only is called by success, we just write successful. And that's how everything in PlayFab works. We have login. Login gets a login request, in our case username, password. There could be different ones. We have here login with email and password, and we also have login with Facebook and everything, even Nintendo Switch. So it's really easy to implement different register and login behaviors because they are already given by the framework, which makes things a lot easier. But I went with the username, email and password thing. And then we log in. Error again points to the error page, and success basically makes success and updates the screens and do default Unity stuff. And I have update my data, which always reads my inventory and checks my trades. So let's check the open a trade. And the thing is, with open a trade, it in my case gets a string which item you want to trade, and then we have a request. Let's check this request. Allowed player IDs. These are the IDs of the player who are allowed to accept this trade. This could be empty, so every player will be able to accept the trade. But I basically said there need to be one. I wanted to have one player trading stuff to another player. So what I get, I have the email address and I need the PlayFab ID, and I created a small function which gets the account info of that email address, and in the callback it calls my action with the PlayFab ID. Normally you would create a repository which caches those because they normally don't change and stuff like that, but like I said, sample code, simple. That was the goal. So when we open a trade, we get the PlayFab ID here in the ID of this email that the trade player, and we only allow this player to accept the trade. So we have player to player trading and not an official auction house. And then we offer our item, and if our item is item ID 1, then we want an item 2 as we request an item 2, and if we provide an item 2, we request an item 1. So what we can say is basically with open trades, we can open a trade to multiple players, to one player, or to everybody. This is a list, so we could put in more players. We can offer which items we offer, and we can even request items as a response. Since I play a lot of MMORPGs, trading in MMORPGs basically works totally different. It's more like trade request from player A to player B accepts, and then player A and player B can put in items or what they want to trade in the trade state, and only if both are fine with everything, they both press accept, and when both have accepted, the trade is fulfilled. That's how I know trading, and it works like that. If you press accept, but the other player removes an item or something, then your acceptance is revoked, and nobody changes the state of the trade, and just both press accept, and then the trade will be fulfilled, so no one could scam the other person. That's how it's implemented currently in most games that I know, but in PlayFab it's working completely different. You could make this work like that with PlayFab, but you have to develop a lot around the framework to make this possible. But if it's enough for you to have the trade opening player state how the trade is given, and the other one can just accept or cancel the trade, then the framework does fine for you. So we can open the trade now. Let's let's log in again. And let's put my other player in here. And open a trade for item 1. Me, as the player who opened the trade, I can't see the trades that are possible. So I see that I trade item 1 for an item 2, and I'm ABCD, and I trade with KDS Best. And we need this ID. The reason for that, I will show you the reason for that. And this is where I think that the API definitely needs some work. Because, let me get the ID real fast. It's here. Let's open Notepad and get the ID. The thing is, when I log in as the one who got offered the trade, I see that this player still has a trade open. This is not the trade that we just opened. This is from my test before that. Let's just ignore that for now. And the thing is, I don't see the trade. Just the person who opens the trade sees that there's a trade which he has opened, but there's no way, at least I didn't find any way, for the other player to see what trades are possible for me to accept. So what he needs to know, the trade basically. I need to know that the other one needs the item 2, and I need to know the ID of the trade, and I need to know who was given the trade, and then I can accept. And it will happen that I lose the item 2 and get the item 1 of the other player, and I have accepted this trade. So you have to again build something around when a trade is opened. You need to save it in your database, and then you have to build it yourself currently, that the other player can search your database then with the Azure function call that we have seen before to see what trade he's able to accept. So I think the trading API definitely needs some work from PlayFab, but it is working like you see. And like I said, when PlayFab offers you something which you want to use and they implemented it the way you want to use it, it's really awesome. You get a lot of stuff for free. Setting up PlayFab also is quite easy. You have this when you install the SDK, then you have this configuration where you can log in and then just select which title you want to leverage, and then obviously my key is now leaked. So the thing is, what I also don't like about PlayFab is where the key is saved, because in PlayFab SDK shared public resources, there's a resource file and there's your title ID and your secret, which is really bad because it's really deep into the folder structure. And I actually searched for this PlayFab shared settings on GitHub, and I found a bunch of leaked keys, which just happens because it's really when you do a pull request, and there's a lot of stuff in here because the whole SDK is in here, and you have the whole SDK and somewhere down, and if no one looks at that, and that's really bad in my opinion. But if you know it, please put this on git ignore and don't public your developer secret key, which I did with this video now, because I would be 100% too lazy to black this out. But I will revoke the key after I uploaded the video. So this is PlayFab. Like I said, a lot of features are super awesome. For example, PlayFab Party with voice chat easily to get implemented, chatting with other players, and login registering with different API services like Facebook and everything. Really easy to implement, really easy to maintain. You get this whole stuff to maintain everything to have support working, ban people, everything is really great. There are some features with like the trading API, which I'm not totally a fan of, but there you can do pretty much everything you want with it when you have a Azure function behind it to do the stuff that PlayFab is missing. So I think it's really great for people who want to have some features and a lot of support stuff they get for free. For example, if you want to have a leaderboard, I heard a lot of good stuff about the leaderboard and items. If you just want not use the trading API but the item API, items can be consumable and you can consume them and everything. You have a virtual currency behind it, so you can rebuild an item store with that really easy. And those are really mature features of PlayFab and which work really great. And again, matchmaking is currently preview, but again, PlayFab party with chatting and having lobbies and everything in of your game, really easy to set up, really easy to use. And even when you're a small developer team, even getting the features to ban and check what people are doing and everything for free is just great. Or even the dashboards, if you want to check out how your game is doing and everything. Building those things on yourself is a lot of work. It really is. I wouldn't underestimate it. And it's things when you go live with your game you will definitely need. So if PlayFab has some features that you want to use, definitely use it. It's a great tool for every game developer out there. And even if, for example, we want to build trading around this API, but we have to do with some Azure functions, like I said, requesting what trades are possible for the player and everything, that's still easier to build than to build everything what you get for free yourself. So it's a great tool. I highly recommend it. And if you have any more questions, use the comment section or join my Discord. I'm really active at my Discord. I answer pretty much every question a subscriber of this channel has. So just join my Discord, ask me anything about it. I will try and help you as much as I can. I really want to support the subscriber who asked the question about trading and PlayFab and everything, and also obviously my Patreon Jan also very much. Thank you for supporting this channel. Have a great week. Bye.